It's your man Alex, and in this video I'm going to be showing you guys how to cut your own hair with simple fading steps for beginners. So let's get right into it. So to get started with this self haircut, I'm going to be putting in the first guideline using my trimmers. Now this guideline is the bald guideline, which I'm using to create that skin fade look. Now I'm starting the guideline toward the top of my ear and going straight back horizontally on the side of my head. And then as soon as I get toward the back of my ear, I'm going to slightly drop that guideline just a little bit below the occipital ridge on the back of my head. And if for those of you guys that don't know, the occipital ridge is the bone that connects the skull to your spine. And you'll feel it if you just run your finger through the back of your head. Right in that crease is where you want to keep the bottom portion of that first guideline. This of course just helps make the haircut look more symmetrical as it gets a little bit longer toward the top of your head. So it just looks nicer overall. And just make sure that you're using your mirrors appropriately to make sure that the left and right side of your head as well as the back are even, because sometimes you can make the back of the head look a little bit lopsided. So just be patient and double check with your mirrors, of course. Now I'm going in with the no guard lever open, and I'm putting in a 3/4 to 1 inch guideline all the way around my head, making sure that exactly the left side, the right side, the back, the entire guideline all the way around my head is between 3/4 to 1 inch, all right, about a finger's width in length going up and down for that guideline. And the reason why this is so important is because when you spread out each guideline to 3/4 to 1 inch, it really helps when you're going into fade in the hard lines. So the larger, the thicker those guidelines are, the more gradient you can make the fade look going from light to dark, right? So really a fade is just a transition in color. So from light on the bottom to darker on the top, it's just a gradient transition to color. So the thicker you make those guidelines, the thicker that transition from light to dark is going to be, and the more gradient and easier it's going to be for the fade. So that's why I like to emphasize doing big, thicker guidelines, because when I used to, cut my hair many years ago, I would do 1/2 inch, 1/3 inch guidelines, and the fades always came out looking, just not good, right? Look more like a bowl cut than anything. So stretch out your guidelines 3/4 to 1 inch, and you guys should have really nice fades, or at least a nice setup to go in and fade in the hard lines after. And so for me, I love to put in the guidelines using the lever in the open position. So the no guard lever open, number 1 guard lever open, number 2 guard lever open, and then I go in with the fading portion of the haircut. That's when I start to adjust the lever to the lever halfway and closed positions. So now that all of the guidelines are in on my head, I've got the trimmers, the no guard lever open, the 1 guard lever open, and the 2 guard lever open. Now we've got a bunch of hard lines in our head that we have to get rid of. So in order to start getting rid of those hard lines and blending it in to create a gradient fade, I'm going to start off with the no guard lever halfway, and I'm going to be touching up the bottom hard line. Now, what this is going to be doing is getting rid of and softening that bottom hard line by about roughly 50%. So when we're fading in hard lines, we want to soften them up first, especially the hard line that's connected to the skin, like that's really, really tight and close to skin. You want to use a softening lever position. So that's with the lever halfway. Then, as soon as we soften it up, 50% of that hard line is removed. Now we can go and close the lever completely to the no guard lever closed, and then start to go from underneath the hard line. We flick from underneath up, hit the line, and then we flick away from our head. And then you can also use your opposite hand, so your left hand in my case, to pull your scalp to stretch out the skin and make it a little bit easier, a little bit more safe when flicking out the hard line. And if you want to know exactly what type of mirror setup I use for my self haircuts, I'll leave the link to that video in the card section above, or you can just type in on YouTube, Alex Kouras, the best mirror setup for self haircuts. So now I'm using the half guard lever closed, and I'm going to be using this to remove that second hard line. So what I'm doing is going from underneath the hard line, going up, hitting the hard line, pushing through a little bit more, and flicking away from my head at the same exact time. Now I'm also using my left hand as well to stretch out my skin. This of course elongates that hard line a little bit and makes it a little bit easier when I'm fading so I don't accidentally create a brand new hard line. So now using the 1.5 guard lever closed, I'm going in to remove that third hard line just around the part line of my head. So I'm following the same exact steps as the half guard lever closed, just going from underneath the hard line, going up, hitting the hard line, following through a little bit more as I flick away from my head. And of course, if you're seeing any hard lines still or any bulky areas within the fade, you can always adjust the lever to get rid of them. So now to get rid of the hard line that blends in from the fade to that longer length on top, I'm going to be using the thinning shears over comb technique. Now a lot of you guys might think thinning shears are a little bit too intimidating, but I promise you they barely cut any hair anyway, so you're better off just getting them and practicing with them so that you can master them. They're honestly the most underrated tool for self haircuts and hair cutting in general, so I highly recommend you practice using them because they only cut like 20% of the hair anyway every time you snip. So now I'm going in with the reverse thinning shear method, which is a method that I've discovered and coined throughout my own self haircut journey, and it's honestly one of the greatest things that I've discovered for removing out hard lines and bulky spots within the fade. It also does a great job of creating a little bit more of a gradient within the fade and overall just a nice way to detail the fade and just get rid of those hard lines, especially the hard line that connects to your skin that was put in with the trimmers. So if you feel like your fades aren't turning out as good as you'd like them to, I highly recommend you test out this method. So now to go in and clean up the length on top of my head, I'm just going to be using my hair cutting scissors and trimming off the ends and just evening everything out. So what I'm going to be doing is creating vertical sections all around the sides and the perimeter of my head. So right where the part line is on the sides of your head and the crown on the back, I'm basically following that straight line where the part line is and creating little vertical sections and cutting 90 degrees straight up from those sections. And so what this is doing is creating a nice balance and a nice gradients from the fade on the sides and back to that little bit longer of hair on the top of my head. And so you'll also notice that I'm trying to use my fingers and the comb at the same time. So if the hair's a little bit too short and I can't grasp the hair with my fingers, I'll probably just use the comb as you see right now and just try to blend it out like that with the comb. So this is one of those methods where you just have to kind of figure out which one works better. If the hair's a little bit too short to get in between my fingers, I have to go ahead and transition into the comb so it's a little bit easier for me. And then once I get all of the hair by the perimeter of my head, I'm going to start going into the center and the middle of my head by pulling everything straight up vertically and then cutting straight horizontally across the hair. So I think the last self haircut I did a textured self haircut. So that's why you see the hair is kind of wonky and there's a bunch of like ridges in between the hair. So what I'm doing here is just evening it all out, flattening it and making it look a lot nicer and a little bit more natural as well, so that when it lays after I shower, it lays a lot more, I guess just nicer and a little bit more natural and smoother. So now that the fade is done and the length on top is pretty much cleaned up, I'm going to be going in and giving myself a nice lineup. So with my forehead, I like to use these small scissors to clean up the little hairs by my lineup. So this is pretty much a very risk-free way of cleaning up your hairline, because if I were to use the trimmer, obviously you run the risk of just narrowing off a bunch of your hair by the front of your forehead, and that's obviously a big no-no. We don't want that to happen. So I take the safer route and just use my little scissors to trim up those baby hairs, and I use a headband as well to keep the hair back. Then I use my trimmers to do the vertical bars on the sides and the C-cup around my eyebrows as well. And if you want your lineups to come out really crispy clean with really nice straight lines, I highly recommend you get yourself a trimmer that has the T blade on it, which is basically a blade that looks like the capital letter T. I'll make sure I leave the link in the description below for you guys. To style my hair, I'm going to be using my first ever hairstyling product, Organic Clay by Kouras. Organic Clay is a 100% all natural, hair healthy, 6-ingredient hairstyling clay that gives your hair a high hold matte finish. The ingredients in Organic Clay are shea butter, arrowroot powder, beeswax, kaolin clay, rosemary oil, and vitamin E oil. That's it. With over 16 years of experience in the hair cutting space, I've never seen nor used a hairstyling product that actually treats and styles your hair at the same time. And once you try it, there's no going back. This is how to cut your own hair with simple fading steps for beginners and how you can save $1,000 to $3,000 a year on haircuts for the rest of your life. Let me know in the comments below how you think the haircut turned out and what styles you'd like me to try out next. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out this video if you want to take your self haircuts to the next level.